not only in the Monarch Facebook group, but in other areas. Some confusion and some concern, and even sometimes a little bit of demotivation around bookkeeping whilst you're studying and your career, because there are quite a few challenges, I'm sure you'd agree, that you have to address along the way. So I'm just hoping to provide you with some insights and some motivation, and hopefully get you as excited about this industry of bookkeeping as I am, you know, just to provide you with that extra little bit of motivation, because it is hard studying part-time with managing families and working. So when there's mysterious challenges ahead, that can be very demotivating. So firstly, just a few things to table that I have found really enormously wonderful about a career in bookkeeping. The first one that has been very dear to me is the fact that I have been able to work my career around my family requirements. You know, I was able to be there at the school carnivals. I was able to drop and pick from school most of the time. Obviously, I'd have to shift the work and manage the work, but it did afford me that flexibility most of the time. So for me, that was certainly one huge advantage. The capacity, particularly these days, to work anywhere, anytime with your clients. Look at this wonderful Zoom meeting facility. We're all around the country, and I can come into your studies and your living rooms and you know, deliver some information to you kind of in a really personal sort of a way. And certainly the bookkeeping function today is one that affords you that level of flexibility. And I guess along comes with that a greater capacity to juggle that really important work-life balance. I actually know of an MYOB partner who her husband retired, but she wasn't quite ready to give away all of her clients yet. But the husband wanted to travel around Australia and be one of the grey nomads. So she packed up the laptop, and that's exactly what it looks like for her on many days of the week in her office. So, you know, it's definitely doable, and people are, you know, running their businesses like that today. I think it's a really special role being the bookkeeper to a business entity, because you are such a support mechanism to those business owners. You really get a sense of inclusion and achievement around assisting small businesses and driving them and providing them with that very important function around compliance. But more than that, assisting them in driving their businesses and understanding what the financial statements are telling them. And that's a pretty special role to have. You become a very trusted confidant. And for many of you, probably you will get comfort out of the fact that it's really a systematic role. It's a very well organised role. And many of you will have been driven to consider a career in the bookkeeping industry based on your passions around order and you know, getting the detail correct. So here are some of my anecdotal observations around what bookkeepers enjoy, and hopefully you look at these and think, yep, these are the sorts of things that float my boat. Many a time have I seen a bookkeeper, you know, really being frustrated by not being able to find that 5 cents to balance out the bank account, or you know, petty cash tin or whatever. So they're very much about the detail. They enjoy conquering the detail. They also enjoy a challenge. I find most of the bookkeepers I've ever met really get a kick out of helping others. It's that supporting the small business owner piece that really helps them spring out of bed every day. Sometimes they're too helpful and don't charge as much or as well as they should for the services that they provide, but that's a totally separate challenge. They typically enjoy learning new things and mostly enjoy engaging with new technologies, and there's so much out there today to get excited about. Very typically well organised and enjoy structure, and you know, accept that growth and change is necessary, and again, especially today in our age of technology, that is so true. So what exactly is bookkeeping? My clicker's just not working. Bookkeeping is a very, very ancient practice. In fact, they've found historical remains that suggest people were keeping the books of enterprises, even up to 7,000 years ago. Certainly the double entry principles that you've been learning were firstly put in black and white in a textbook by a gentleman by the name of Luca Pacioli in around 1400. So those principles were established in a textbook a long, long time ago as well. And it's on that basis, those double entry principles, that all accounting software is built upon. Well, most of them are built upon today, even though it's changed. Now, for those of you who've gone through your accounting foundation units, no doubt you've had the experience of that painful posting from journals to ledgers and then to the financial statements, and how easy it can be to make small errors that mean your trial balance doesn't balance. I wish I could be looking at some of you, because I'm sure some of you are nodding. That's a really detailed process that can be quite painful. Thanks, Athena. She's nodding there. And then enter computerized accounting in early 1990s was when MYOB entered the Australian small business space, and really actually took off hugely in 2000, when businesses had to adapt their processes to deal with the GST, the reporting, collection and remittance to the ATO. So that drastically changed the landscape for bookkeepers in Australia. Not only were these businesses having to report, and they were also confused about what their compliance obligations was. A big transitional time, a big time of change. So computerized accounting meant that we could move away from this single entry Excel spreadsheets and the shoebox full of receipts to the accountant once a year, into a really systematic way of relatively easy data entry. Sorry about that interruption. And bookkeeping today has evolved yet again. Some of you may have heard some noise out there from different sides of the media. I've certainly seen a couple of articles in the past week shared on social media that talk about how bookkeeping is 98% likely to be a completely redundant occupation within several years. I can certainly reassure you that that is absolutely not the case. Bookkeepers who are in practice today would giggle with you about that suggestion, because in fact, technology is automating processes and allowing us to streamline the way we do bookkeeping, which is exactly what happened when computerized accounting in the desktop was introduced all those moons ago. All the technology is doing is increasing the complexities around the setup and the level of advice that a business owner needs to have in relation to what best business process fits and what technologies will support them best to have the most efficient outcome in terms of managing their business. And that's never looks the same for any two businesses, because we need to analyse the needs of the business and set them up with the solutions that support that particular business. So I can only see technology increasing a business owner's need to engage with a well-qualified, well-skilled, well-experienced bookkeeper. So you've probably heard the cloud bantered around a fair bit, and the cloud is providing some awesome opportunities in terms of the automation of the bookkeeping process. Essentially, the cloud says we're now starting to move away from having all of our information only stored within the machine that is our computer, storing on the C drive, which is the way we did things 5 years ago. what the cloud is doing is storing that information in servers that are external to the business. And that means that from any device, i.e. from my laptop, from my smartphone, from my tablet, I can access my information via a browser. So certainly that's the case with some of the accounting products, like for example, Intuit QuickBooks Online is a purely browser-based accounting software solution. Same for Xero, which is available in the Monarch Institute courseware, as I'm sure you're aware. So they are 100% browser-based or cloud-based solutions. Whereas the more traditional products like MYOB or Reckon, they're actually desktop solutions historically, where the software was stored on the desktop, or perhaps for larger organisations with multi-users, they might have been stored on a server in a server room so that people sitting at their desks could log into that server and access. But it was all still on premises, okay, as opposed to the cloud that is completely on somebody else's server. And other examples of cloud technologies that I use day to day is a product called Dropbox, and that's where I store all my files. I have them available locally as well, so if I'm offline, they're there. But Dropbox, when I'm online, synchronizes my files so that I've got them in 2 locations. So that means I can leave my laptop at home and I can come over to your place for a study date, Nicole, and I can access my documents from your browser and download them locally. So it gives this huge amount of flexibility in terms of accessing the data. Another example of a cloud-based solution that I use is called Rike, which is a project management system, all in the cloud. I can set up tasks, manage tasks, and have apps on multiple devices to use it. Now, I could keep talking for the next half an hour about these sorts of cloud-based solutions, but essentially understanding the difference between the desktop and the cloud is that the information in the cloud is accessed via a browser and not only stored within the machine itself, the computer machine itself. Okay, so I spoke just now about MYOB. Well, we're going to just have a look. I've just been asked what the project management tool was called. I use Rike, a product called Rike, which is spelled W-R-I-K-E. There are plenty of others out there. Just a couple off the top of my head is Podio and Asana. They all have free versions in the first instance. Obviously, the more functionality you want, then you start to subscribe to these services on a monthly basis. Okay, so yeah, just to now look at the lie of the land in terms of accounting software. And, you know, I would encourage you to start connecting with the accounting softwares, even during the course of your studies, because I'm going to be encouraging you to network. And there are many different ways you can do that. So MYOB, as I mentioned before, probably has dominated the Australian marketplace for many years and was the earliest arriver, closely followed by Reckon, who I'll talk to in a minute. You would have heard about QuickBooks, and that's actually owned by an American company called Intuit. And several years ago, Intuit came into Australia and took over the QuickBooks brand from Reckon. And Reckon who formerly had the QuickBooks brand in Australia, created their own suite of solutions. Now, Intuit QuickBooks Online in Australia is 100% cloud-based. They do not have any desktop or hybrid solutions, whereas MYOB, they have a purely cloud-based solution called Essentials, 100% access through the browser, but their biggest selling item, most popular item, is a software called Account Right Live. And if you're studying the computerized accounting subject with Monarch and you choose MYOB, then you'll be learning in the Account Right Live product. Now, the big deal with that one is, and in my opinion, it's quite a big advantage, is Account Right Live can sit in the desktop and be synchronized to the cloud as well if you want it. So you have the best of both worlds. as I said, QBO, 100% cloud-based solution, as is Xero. And no doubt you've heard of Xero, and it's the other option available to you when you're studying the computerised unit with Monarch Institute. And then we've got, as I mentioned, Reckon. Now, Reckon, like MYOB, have both desktop solutions, hosted solutions, and they have a 100% cloud-based solution called Reckon One as well. So all of those softwares have 100% online cloud solutions, but MYOB and Reckon are the only two who have maintained a presence where you can have the flexibility of working locally as well as working in the cloud. Because obviously, if I'm in QBO or Xero, I need internet access to be able to access my data. So if you're traveling and you have issues with that, then clearly that can cause barriers, I guess, in terms of getting your work done. If the internet access is not available when you're taking flights, for example, or inconsistent and things like that. I guess the other big call out there for you to start thinking about is that the reality is there are lots of add-on solutions today. Some of these products will help businesses across a whole gambit of their needs. So, for example, if you've got a business with a large inventory management issue, then clearly you'd want a software that can handle the management of that inventory. There are limitations in some of the 100% cloud solutions around managing inventory, as just one example. So I guess my point here is if you're working with a business, a startup, and they're deciding which software suits them best, then you need to really map out what their requirements are to help you fit that software together. The reality is there's heaps of add-on solutions available that help us do what we do, and there's just a few there to get us started. I mean, literally there are thousands of add-on solutions. As an example, at one of the upcoming software companies' conference days, there's about 960 exhibitors going there, most of whom will probably be some sort of technology solution. Incidentally, AAT have a free monthly webinar available for our students. We call them Tech Talks. There's one tomorrow, actually. They're always on the last Thursday of the month. And what we aim to do there is connect our members with the add-on solutions that are out there so that they have an understanding of what is available to help business process. One example there is the Receipt Bank. Essentially, Receipt Bank is an online depository for invoices where those invoices and receipts and all of that information is captured, usually with a photograph or perhaps an email into the Receipt Bank in tray, and all of that data automatically gets populated into the accounting software. So you're not actually having to type in the amount of the expense paid and the GST involved. The optical character recognition allows this technology to intelligently decide which expense account the Telstra bill belongs to and how much GST is in the invoice. And all you need to do is click that you accept that data entry is correct. So it really has streamlined that business process quite significant. Entryless is another example of that sort of solution. Again, this is an area where I could talk for the next few hours on the sorts of technology that are available to streamline business process, but that's not the purpose of today. I guess one more point to make on this slide is your capacity to join as partners with these softwares. Certainly the main four, MYOB, QuickBooks Online, Xero and Reckon, have a look at them. Consider which companies' philosophies seem to fit with you and join their partner communities. Often they're free. Some you pay for, depending on what level you want of certification. But they all of them have at least one level that is actually free to you. So it's not a further layout at this stage whilst you're students. But what that will do is give you access to attending their roadshows and their conferences. Again, most of those are free. So some you pay for, but a lot of the roadshow, it's just by invitation, and along you go. So not only are you learning about the product updates and the add-on solutions and all of that sort of good gear, you also will be given an opportunity to meet other accountants and bookkeepers who are in practice. And I would encourage you to go along and really push yourself outside of the comfort zone, to hand around a card with your contact details on it. And you may connect with someone who's got some opportunities for you in terms of work down the track. So it's an interesting point to note that Australia, when I have discussions with my colleagues internationally, Australia is a really early adopter of these technologies. So we're kind of our processes are quite a couple of years ahead of where they are, for example, in the UK and the USA. So we're still seeing in those countries that they're doing a lot manually, manual data entry, and not embracing those add-on solution technologies. So I guess there's opportunity therefore to kind of be thought leaders and so on, and really at the cutting edge of your game. Now, obviously, I'd love to encourage you to be a part of the AAT community, but also to point out that I think that given all of the things I've told you about, bookkeeping is bookkeeping and has been for thousands of years, but is also so much more than that. We are business consulting experts, we're business process experts, we're payroll experts. And therefore calling yourself an accounting technician, to my way of thinking, is a more all-encompassing concept. So having that brand, you know, on your signature block or on your business card eventually, and being able to call yourself a certified accounting technician with AAT is really a powerful thing. Here's just a couple of quotes from AAT members today. I explained to them, you know, the audience that I was talking to, and I said I wanted to bring some motivation to them about what it is to look forward to as they're pushing through their studies and greeting all of the challenges they face around getting experience and all of those other requirements. And so here's Vicky. She said that she enjoys the freedom that comes with being self-employed bookkeeper. The rules are the same for everyone, and however they work is always varied and interesting. And that's that piece that I was mentioning around business process for each and every business is different. And that's part of the really rewarding process is looking at what that business needs are and piecing all the bits of the puzzle together. And then we've got Jenny, who's told us that she enjoys bookkeeping as a profession because of the family flexibility it's provided. I have smiled and cried at deadline times, and I think we've all been there. But the reward of happy clients and wealth of knowledge I have from my journey is what keeps me going. And I think that resounds, you know, really closely with what I mentioned to you at the beginning of the presentation about the rewards of working in this industry. So yeah, this is just a summary of, you know, what I see as the personal skills and traits that are applicable to the bookkeepers. So are you chasing flexibility to fit around your family or achieve better work-life balance? Do you enjoy assisting others to succeed? Do you enjoy learning something a little bit new every day? Do you enjoy sort of turning chaos into order? And all that piece around continually pushing and looking at what technology is available and how it can help yourself in your practice, but your clients as well. So that's kind of about bookkeeping and a bit of the background, and I've given you a bit of the journey, I guess, since, you know, computerised accounting was introduced into Australia through the GST. In early 2000s, small business owners were really desperately looking for assistance. Where they'd previously only seen their accountant probably once a year with a pile of receipts and an Excel spreadsheet to get their income tax return done, they were now having to tell the ATO about their affairs on a quarterly basis with their BAS, or sometimes even monthly. And they couldn't really afford the accountant's fees. So this is where they started to engage much more regularly with bookkeepers. And in the early 2000s, the ATO identified that this was a bit of an issue because under Section 251L in the Income Tax Assessment Act, it said that ATO cannot receive information from anyone who's not a qualified, recognised authority to do so. And of course, bookkeepers, there was no legislation surrounding, you know, who they were, what qualifications, skills and experience that they needed. So that brought about the Tax Agent Services Act, which was implemented in 2010. And in the Tax Agent Services Act 2009, the legislation established statuses called tax agent, BAS agent, and tax financial advisor. And the Tax Practitioners Board was appointed to administer the needs, the rights and responsibilities of those professionals. So the Tax Practitioners Board, as I said, look after us, and it's to them that you would apply to be registered as a BAS agent. And really, it's pretty difficult to be a contract bookkeeper today without being a registered BAS agent, or, and I stress or because there are options, working closely with someone who is a registered BAS agent or a registered tax agent. I'm going to talk some more on that in a moment. Keeping in mind, to be a bookkeeper as an employee, the provisions of the Tax Agent Services Act do not apply. So you can be an employee within a company and do all of their BAS work, all of their bookkeeping work, and you are not in contravention of the TASA Act. Okay, this is only applying to contracting bookkeepers who charge a fee for providing services around a BAS provision. So what are the requirements for registration with the board? Some of you will know this already if you've studied the BAS unit. So you must have at least a minimum level certificate for qualification in either accounting or bookkeeping. So you can have another qualification associated with accounting, but you must have the BAS agent skill set within that, which is the BAS and payroll unit that you've got in your course. It's actually core to the Certificate 4. So you're definitely meeting the requirements there if you're in the Cert 4. You must be a fit and proper person, and that doesn't mean I can drop to the floor and do 40 burpees. That just means that I am not an undischarged bankrupt. I don't have any criminal convictions against my name, all those sorts of things. So, you know, that I'm a citizen who abides by the laws. If there are bankruptcies in your past, then the TPB will work with you around your suitability for registration as a BAS agent, but it certainly doesn't rule anybody out. You must be over 18 years of age. I'm sure we're all just sneaking over that line. And we must hold professional indemnity insurance, which is really important anyway. The professional indemnity insurance is insurance that covers those who provide services to clients where they're providing advice and things like that. So if things go wrong and you make a mistake, then the indemnity insurance is there to protect you and your clients indeed. And you also must hold either 1,000 or 1,400 hours of relevant experience. Now, the reason there's two different figures there is the 1,000 hours applies to those people who are members of a recognised professional association. So you can find those recognised professional associations listed on the Tax Practitioners Board website, but I can confirm to you that AAT is certainly a recognised professional association by the TPB, and in fact is the longest standing association in Australia. So I've blown up that 1,000 or 14 hours of relative experience because I hear time and time again from students and bookkeepers who are new to the industry, how do I get that experience? Because every job ad I read says that I must have experience. And that's a bit of a headache for me. because I don't know how to connect with that experience. And I am going to talk a little bit more about this in a couple of slides, so just hold that thought. Well, when you're looking at professional indemnity insurance, in fact, coincidentally, I've seen a lot of talk about this on social media pages again recently, and you've got to make sure that you're comparing apples with apples. You really want to make sure that you have a decent insurance policy that covers you if you need it. You want to make sure that you've got a sufficient amount, which the TPB required $250,000 in protection. And the capacity for reinstatement is probably important as well. Also, retroactive cover, meaning if you've got an insurance policy with one provider and you want to change to a different provider, what happens if you have a claim that is dated back to where you had your old insurance policy? So retroactive cover says that your current insurance provider will cover you from the date you first owned a PI insurance policy. Runoff is also an excellent idea, which means that when you cease practicing bookkeeper many, many years down the track, that for a period of time after you cease practicing and therefore not insuring yourself any longer, that you still have the cover to protect you for when you were in practice. I think also subcontractor inclusion can be quite important. So I'm just giving you a few pointers here so that when you do start researching for what insurance policy might best fit you, that you've got armed with some questions to ask. I guess I've also seen policies that are grouped, and by that I mean it might say you've got $10 million of cover, but essentially everyone who sits in that policy has access to the same $10 million. So if the first claim, if they have 5 claims resulting in $2 million of expense each, then the pool's gone and the protection's not there. So clearly that's not a very good outcome. So, yeah, as I said, just a few pointers in terms of things to look out for. AAT have just struck a relationship with an organisation called AB Phillips, and we are able to provide insurance via AAT Insure, and there are a few of the basic elements. The key call-outs as I see them, it's a pretty solid insurance policy. It'll cost you around about $264 per annum, which is pretty competitive price, especially given it's not per annum, it's for 14 months of cover. So more than 12, obviously, and it's a pretty solid policy, with its inclusions, and we're offering that via AAT Insure. So if you'd like further information about that when you're ready to start researching requirements, just let me know. So I promised I'd get to that part about how do I gain experience, and it's not simple. It can be a little bit tricky, but it's certainly something that is not insurmountable. I think that volunteering is a really easy concept way to start. Yes, you do have to put yourself out there and ask the question, but it means that you can deliver that service, gain some experience, and put that experience on your resume for the next opportunity that might come along. Now, I actually was associated with a program a couple of years ago whereby we connected TAFE graduates with a volunteer organisation called Heart Kids. And I had three separate participants on that who all had the bookkeeping role in succession of each other. And each one of those people found employment after 2 or 3 months, having been in that role. And it has to have come down to the fact that they had an experience to put on their resume about, a bookkeeping position that they had accessed. AAT are actually working with Volunteers Australia to see if we can sort out some way of assisting you in connecting with that voluntary experience. I'm not quite there yet. They're sort of having a look at it from their end, but hopefully we'll have something in a month or 2 where we can sort of pull those voluntary experiences for you to have a look at. Janet just asked, does the experience need to be in practice? you can be in employment, Jeanette, sorry. You can be in employment if, I hope that answers your question. So you can be working for a small business as an employee, and they can sign off on the work that you've done for your TPB purposes. Yep, so you're in employment in the industry, so that's fine. You can count that experience, and your employer will sign off on the form that you get from the Tax Practitioners Board. Nicole said, what about applying for volunteer roles which ask for experience but you have none? Well, I guess my only thought around that would be to say to them that you've got experience in terms of the work that you've undertaken within your studies, and even suggest to them that you're happy to, obviously it's a volunteer role anyway, if they give you the opportunity to work with them, we can review the situation in a week or a month or whatever, and just sort of ease your way into that. But yeah, I'd certainly be referring to the experience that you've acquired whilst you've been working through your courseware too. I mentioned before that you can, it's difficult to be a subcontracting bookkeeper with your own clients if you're not yet a registered BAS agent. But that doesn't mean you can't work with someone who is to provide those services. In fact, before I came to work with AAT at the beginning of this year, my business was based around doing exactly that. My clients were no longer small business owners. My clients were actually bookkeepers who were gathering their own clients, and they needed me to assist them in supervising and lodging their BAS work and other compliance work. So I would charge them a fee for lodgement, and they would on-charge that fee to their clients as a lodgement fee. And that's perfectly acceptable. Evelyn's just said that she's an employee in the industry for the last couple of years. Yes, the experience can be backdated. So when you go to apply for your registration, there's a form that you'll need to complete to capture all of that. So you just fill out the details of your work backdated, and get your employer to sign off on those, or the accountant of the employer, whoever you've been working with. So there's nothing to stop you from trying, to establish your business now, or over the next, short while, or soon after you complete your studies. Sure, keep looking for those voluntary opportunities, keep looking for those employment opportunities, but there's nothing that says you can't start knocking on the door of small business to provide contract support services to them, as long as you connect with the supervisor. Now, AAT are currently working on a program. I actually sent out the email yesterday to our members who've been experienced for 5+ years, to say who's interested in connecting with bookkeepers in that exact position who would like to contract their services to businesses but need supervision. We had an overwhelming response to that yesterday afternoon, actually, so I'm really excited for the future of that. We're going to work to putting them through a bit of training to show them how the supervision model can best work, and then we'll start to put those profiles on our website so that you can reach out to those individuals if that's the sort of thing that you want to do moving forward. So another big requirement, not so much whilst you're in your studies, because you're doing a lot of professional development, obviously, whilst you're studying the Cert 4. But CPD is a reality of your life, and it's a really good idea to get into the habit of thinking along those lines. So I mentioned earlier that we have that monthly free tech talk. If you're not an AAT member already, it's free for you. So just fill out the form and send us the details, and then jump on in and connect with all of these free opportunities. We have them quite frequently. Some, obviously, we do pay for, where there's development costs that we incur on our end, but there's certainly many ways you can engage with. And we also list other bodies, CPD. For example, the Tax Practitioners Board runs regular webinars, and we let our members know about that too. So I'd probably keep an eye out for those sorts of opportunities, even whilst you're studying. And as I said, those events that the software companies run, incidentally, early in the year, all of them run a roadshow. So you'll see in February, there'll be heaps of advertising. So if you get in now and connect with them, you'll see that those events and they run all around the country, and even lots of events rurally, like they go to you know, outer suburbs, and they also go into rural areas in Victoria, New South Wales and Queensland. So there's plenty of opportunity there, and I'd encourage you to think about that. I also just wanted to let you know that if you are thinking about looking at setting up your own bookkeeping business, and it doesn't matter if it's not going to be tomorrow that you open your doors, there's a whole bit of process that goes on behind the scenes before you can actually launch and start servicing clients. So whenever you've got the capacity to look at it, if you want to start thinking about what does your bookkeeping practice look like, the Bookkeepers Bootcamp is a course that I've run for several years, and the feedback is quite exceptional, that it really helps you get that mindset, that thinking around what business do you want to have? What does it look like for you? So I ask the questions, and I provide you with resources and templates and tools and so on. Even in session 3 with meeting new clients, you got some checklists and conversation starters with potential new clients, because often that's the part that becomes really stressful for you, is like, I actually don't know what to say. So it's a confidence piece, and most of the time I talk to freshly graduated students, and there's a bit overwhelmed, a bit confused about actually where do I start? There are so many things to think about. I just don't even know where to start, and I don't know all of the questions to ask. So that's what Bootcamp aims to start doing, just as an FYI. So that ends the slide decks that I have. Any questions that you'd like to ask separately to that? And it doesn't have to be related to the content that I've provided today. I'm just happy to take any questions that you have generally. Either unmute yourself or type via the chat facility. Okay, well, it doesn't look like there are any questions there. If you do want to take up the AAT student membership, just send an email to membership, not memberships, just singular membership at aat.org.au, and the membership team will send out an application form for you. I've just had a question, how do we enroll for the Bookkeepers Bootcamp? That was, if you go to the AAT website and you click on the Education tab, you'll see Bookkeepers Bootcamp details listed in there, and there should be a link for you to actually register for that. I think I've got one starting next week. Bootcamp's online. Each session is an hour and a half, and as I said, it comes with tools and written resources and all that sort of stuff. So session 1 will start next week, and it'll be every week for 6 weeks for an hour and a half. But don't worry if that's too soon. I'll be running them all of the time, and I'm actually going to record them separately as well, so that, you know, for those who find it difficult to catch up at a regular time, you know, you can have that flexibility. So I'll certainly let you know. Now I've just been asked the cost for the bootcamp. If I can get you to check that out on the website, because there are discounted amounts for members, so you might want to have a look at that. But essentially, at full price, the bootcamp is $80 per session. So yeah, but if you want to have a look at the different pricing options, please jump on the AAT website. Okay, so just a question about bookkeeping experience in South Africa. You'd need to talk to the Tax Practitioners Board about that. I'd suggest that that wouldn't be suitable for the full 1,400 hours, because you wouldn't have studied BAS treatments and legislation specific to, you know, Australian payroll laws and so on and so forth. But they may be willing to consider part of that experience in terms of your application. So my suggestion, and I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name, Pathmalonsi. If you reach out to the Tax Practitioners Board directly and just run that scenario past them. Cool bananas. Alrighty. Well, you know, I'm reachable via that email address that I gave you before, membership@aat.org.au. I'm really keen to help. I'm very passionate about assisting students through the course of their studies and into their careers, as I hope you can tell. And I do understand it can be a really, you know, overwhelming and sometimes stressful time, because there are so many questions that are left unanswered. So please do reach out. Anyway, looks like that's it for the questions. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. You will receive a link to this recording in due course. I'll get my team to organise that and email it out to you. So thanks, guys. Have a wonderful afternoon.